I've been using caffeine regularly since I was 12 or 11,
Me
which is
too.
standard, I think. But
Yeah.
what I didn't realize at the time is that my sleep was actually not restorative. My mental health and my energy both became concerns as I started to kind of evolve into a more mature teenager. Essentially, I was kind of an outcast, socially isolated, anxious, depressed, and lower energy, the higher anxiety and stuff like that, all improved vastly when I started using CPAP therapy. One of my early targets is going to be MSE and other kinds of less invasive treatments, see how that works for me. And if necessary, move on to the more aggressive treatments afterwards. Is MSE about $5,000 or less for the procedure? What would you say?
You mean the whole orthodontic process, including post
Yeah.
MSE orthodontics, is going to be closer to 10, 15, 20, 25,000, depending on what part of the country you're in. For an orthodontist who's going to be rebuilding your face, if you have two providers that are in striking distance from you, see them both.
I'm glad that it won't take a whole lot of extra procedures from my lower jaw to kind of catch up to my upper jaw with that expansion.
Yeah, man. And just on that note, I asked Dr. Ting, what do you think about mandibular skeletal expansion? He was like, nah, fuck that. I asked Dr. Lipkin, same thing, not necessary. And then I asked Mariana Evans, do you think MSDO is important? Like, do you think we should be able to do distraction osteogenesis on the lower jaw? She said it's not necessary. Definitely, the easiest way to improve mind state and mood is by first going to the body, fixing things like your airway, but then also flooding your body with as much natural dopamine as possible through low sugar eating, through running every day, lifting, 3-4 times a week, and cold plunging or cold showering.
Mm-hmm.
Like the dopamine spikes that you can get by just focusing on bodily disciplines is absolutely the most direct route to mood improvement. When you're in that extremely still, stable, blissful state, the frame rate of the camera, so to speak, of your mind is slow enough that you can sort of pick out individual frames and then see your mind working in action and have deep meditative insights, in that state of concentration.
Got it. All right. Well, I'll just start with kind of like my primary complaint, which is sleepiness and lack of energy and attention.
How old are you, by the way?
22.
Damn, bro, you're so smart for your age.
I credit a lot of what I know to YouTube and its algorithms, and I feel like it's been kind of an academic father to me in a weird way. I also am kind of like at this point in my life trying to veer off of YouTube because I think that it has so much to offer that you can never actually, if you're someone like me who's kind of struggling to focus, you can never hone in to the 100th degree on what you're trying to learn. And usually the stuff that you gain from YouTube, hopefully you're taking it away and practicing it. In my case, I just kind of like I flip from video to video like many, and I collect a little bit of information here and there. But
yeah, it's
so,
information is not the end, it's a means to an end, and you have to make sure that you're not just mentally masturbating.
Totally. Yeah. And I have a lot.
Ideas are very easy to make sense of on paper, but then taking an idea and implementing it into the physical or social world is a whole different skill set.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've been using caffeine regularly since I was 12 or 11, which is standard, I think. But what I didn't realize at the time is that my sleep was actually not restorative. And the reason that I was abusing caffeine in the levels that I was, sometimes as many as probably like 800 or 900 milligrams in a day.
Damn.
And that's not like impossible for me now, but I generally don't require that much or tend to lean into it that much. Caffeine was basically my crutch, and it has remained my crutch throughout the years. But my mental health and my energy both became concerns as I started to kind of evolve into a more mature teenager. Essentially, I was kind of an outcast, socially isolated, anxious, depressed, and I went from a gifted and talented program in I wouldn't say a metropolitan area. It was a suburb of a metropolitan area to a rural area with my family, and then promptly fell off the kind of like academic cliff into the abyss of just kind of like the internet and whatever. And yeah, I didn't really launch at that time in my life into friend circles, and I credit
At what
that.
age? At what age?
Between 12 and 18, I didn't have any lasting friendships.
Really?
I had like some friendships from before I moved to the rural area of Minnesota that I was in, but I couldn't really maintain those. And then afterwards, I just hadn't learned what I needed to learn. So I've kind of come into adulthood with a lot of underdeveloped social skills, and I credit that in large part to, like I said, the lower energy, the higher anxiety and stuff like that, which all improved vastly when I started using CPAP therapy. So
Wow.
right now I have a ResMed AirSense 11, which is one of the more, I wouldn't say cutting edge, but like just more recent models. And I have a nasal mask, and that one change essentially turned me from a bipolar freak into a like relatively normal functioning human, and that allowed me to stabilize my life. And now I've been in a committed relationship for basically that entire duration. Ever since I got treatment, then I became able to thrive.
Is that a
So
BiPAP or a CPAP?
CPAP. I went for the mildest amount of air pressure because I was nervous that if I were to kind of rely too heavily on the air pressure, that I would kind of atrophy the breathing muscles that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on like basically the lowest, the least intense CPAP therapy possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you use nicotine at all, or just caffeine?
Caffeine, I did consider using nicotine, but I also, one of the things that you have to be wary of when you have a diagnosis of bipolar, like I do, that is too much stimulation that can trigger hypomania or mania. And also I just like, I think that I had kind of underappreciated food and nutrition and exercise. So I'm trying to angle towards that and stay away from nicotine for a little while. Not because I think nicotine is bad. I know that the science on that is pretty clear. It's not damaging in and of itself, but it is not something that I've had to rely on so far.
Yeah, and you're not looking to add a crutch if you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't be opposed to it, but my ultimate goal is more or less freedom from the underlying problem.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep. Well, okay. So I understand a little bit more about your background. So bring us to today. Your teenage years were a little bit lacking in social skill development. A lot of that had to do with, your undersized airway. Now that you've got the CPAP, you've kind of proved that to be the case. You feel much better now that you're using CPAP. You're in a relationship now. You seem really cool and chill on this interview. So obviously something is working. Now, bring us to today, and how do we go forward from here? How do we build on the success you've already had?
That's a good question. So today I've kind of like stepped up from the entry level position at the previous job I had to a similar position in an adjacent company. So I do lawn care landscape, and I have for most of my life. And so now my earning power is a lot higher in this other position I have. It's for a university. And that also means I have a pretty adequate health insurance plan with health savings accounts that I can use towards procedures and that kind of thing. And so I think because I've bumped up my ability to like think about the future, my like one of my early targets is going to be MSE and other kinds of less invasive treatments, see how that works for me, and if necessary, move on to the more aggressive treatments afterwards. But that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
I appreciate you referring to MSE as a less invasive treatment. Normally, normies in this space would refer to like tooth-borne expanders as less invasive treatments. Of course, tooth-borne expanders are more invasive, not less invasive.
Yeah.
MSE is truly the most minimally invasive procedure in this space because what are our options? MSE and jaw surgery, right? So it's like the jab, then the right hook. So yeah, most good jaw expansion protocols begin with a skeletal expander. Now, you said you're in Minnesota.
That's correct.
That's going to pose a challenge, but definitely not an insurmountable one.
Okay.
So what would you like to talk about next? Like next steps toward getting an MSE?
Exactly. Yep.
Have you found any doctors?
I think there might be one in Minnesota who does this, but I'm not sure of their credentials. I'm not sure how well respected they are. And the thing is, because MSE, as far as I understand, is not a terribly expensive appliance, and the procedure itself is, well, I'd rather back up and ask you, since you know a lot more about this. Is MSE less than about $5,000 or less for the procedure? What would you say?
Does that include, you mean the whole orthodontic process, including post MSE orthodontics?
Just the actual application of the MSE and installation.
It's hard to separate the application of the MSE from the rest of the treatment plan that includes making things come back in line after you blow them up with the MSE.
Okay.
But a typical MSE treatment plan that includes Invisalign or braces is going to be closer to 10, 15, 20, 25,000, depending on what part of the country you're in. You're in the less expensive part of the country. Probably, I would even go as far as to say the least expensive part of the country, which is the Midwest. The Deep South is also more affordable. The West Coast is the worst. The East Coast is sort of okay. It's half of the West Coast, but it's still expensive. But the Midwest, you should be looking at 10K or less. I would think 10K, I would say, would be the high end of like a good, reliable MSE provider plus orthodontics. I don't think you're going to get the MSE in isolation from the orthodontics, nor would you want to.
Right. Yeah.
The bite is just as important as the MSE. The MSE is actually the easy part. It's the post MSE orthodontics where you really need patience and skill and persistence, because the MSE is 3 months, right? Everything else is, 18 months, 24 months. It's like, that's the long slog. So that's really where you need a provider who is intelligent, is patient, is strategic, easy to work with. So I wouldn't think of MSE in isolation from the post MSE orthodontics.
I see. All that to say, and thank you very much for informing me about the kind of the map of the U.S. and where that all prices out. I'm sure that's, I mean, if anybody else saw this, that would be helpful too, but I think you probably inform everybody who comes to you with that kind of information. So what I'm trying to say is that I think, my earning power is now strong enough that with a payment plan, I can move towards that kind of thing, maybe in the next 6 months to a year. So that's really exciting for me. Do you have any people in the Midwest that you could point me towards?
So I'm checking my database now. There's Dr. Fung and Dr. Green at Designing Smiles near Minneapolis. Have you heard of them?
No, I haven't.
They trained with Dr. Ting. So let me do a screen share real quick, and I can show you my resource that I have on this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So I found this. This was back in January that I found this, searching the Facebook group, the MSE user group on Facebook. And it's Dr. Ting showing himself with Dr. Fung and Dr. Green. And you can see them training with him. So if Dr. Ting vouches for someone, and if someone is trained with Dr. Ting, I can't totally vouch for them, but I can tell you it's a damn good starting place. Okay.
Excellent. That's really hopeful. And I don't even know if I think I might have started looking 1 or 2 years ago in the summer. I don't think that this is relatively recent. I didn't see these providers. Are they? That's awesome.
And then there's this other dude, Carl Peterson, who's in Minneapolis. And so what I would do is, and this is just general advice for life, whenever you're shopping for a big ticket item, you want to get multiple quotes.
Absolutely.
So you're putting a new roof on your house, multiple quotes. You're in the market for a new, Toyota Corolla. Go to 3 dealerships and get 3 quotes, right? For an orthodontist who's going to be rebuilding your face, if you have 2 providers that are in striking distance from you, see them both. Because Lord knows, sometimes you just vibe better with one person over another.
Right.
and it's impossible to know ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So take a little bit, take another month or two if you have to save an extra 500 or $1,000,
mm-hmm.
and then put that $1,000 into additional R&D, research and development of your treatment planning. See the extra doctor, pay the extra consult. Trust me, you won't regret it. If nothing else, some little thing that second doctor tells you during the consultation will stick with you during your treatment, and you'll remember, oh shit, yeah, they said something about that. That's coming up now. And it's just, information is power.
Yeah. That's really exciting. I'm so happy that there are 2 providers, or I mean 3, including both of the doctors at the one place in my area. So very, very excited about that. I suppose if it's all right with you, it would now be wise just to continue with the search for providers for double jaw surgery, so that in case I were to get MSE in the next year or so, or get that process underway, I could start thinking, another year in advance or whatever about the upcoming procedures if necessary.
Yep. Okay, so jaw surgery is a whole different shopping approach.
Okay.
With jaw surgery, you have to totally let go of local. There's one instance where you might consider local, and that's if like you're on a state-sponsored health insurance plan and you can do local for free, as opposed to paying 50 or 60 grand somewhere else. In that case, you would consider making some sacrifice to go with the local person. But even then, it still might be worth it to pay full price to get a 30% improvement in provider from someone in Texas or California or wherever. Okay. So my short list for jaw surgeons is very short. And honestly, I'm pretty moody with it. Like a lot of it is recency bias. It's like, who do I like this month based on what someone told me recently, right? Right now, I'm loving Michael Gunson and David Alfi.
Okay. How do you, well, I can just refer to these through the video later, but also could you spell that for me?
Yeah, Gunson, Gunson, Michael. He's in LA. He's, a super A-list jaw surgeon in this space. The other person is David Alfi, Alfi. If you're an Instagram user, David Alfi has a really bomb Instagram where he shows tons of cases. I actually just did a JawCast episode with him that'll be airing in about 3 weeks. And so the things you want to look for in a surgeon are, well, David Alfi is in a bit of a league of his own because he uses a whole different technological approach to surgery. He takes digital scans and then he 3D prints pre-manufactured plates that he just slaps on you during the surgery to essentially eliminate the margin of error that occurs under the knife. So normally what surgeons do is they build your plates as they go while you're asleep under the knife.
Whoa.
And there's as you could imagine, if you're in someone's freaking face, it's very easy to lose track of a millimeter here or there. And a millimeter here or there is a mile in the big scheme of your face, especially when it comes to canting and things like that are very visible, gumminess of the smile. David Alfi solves all of those problems before you go under the knife on his computer. And when you have the confidence that comes with having done that work before the surgery, then what that allows you to do is be a little bit more bold in your planning. It gives him the comfort to go more rather than less, because I don't know if you've been following my channel the past 6 months or so. The biggest problem that people on JawHacks complain about when it comes to surgery is under advancement. So could you imagine going through the trauma of jaw surgery and then coming out with an underwhelming result?
That'd be the most horrific thing, because you're not going to do that twice, are you?
People do it twice, man. They do. They do it twice.
That's the worst case, huh?
That's the worst case. And it's super common because surgeons would rather be conservative and protect their own ass than take on the risk, of doing a bolder advancement that might come back on them later if something goes wrong or whatever.
Got it.
Alfie is routinely able to expand the full amount because of his high-tech approach that has those pre-manufactured plates that he just, there's essentially no guesswork done during surgery. It's all plug and chug. The work that Alfi, the hard work for Alfi is done before you go unconscious.
I love that.
Yeah.
That sounds so much better. And also, I would love to only do one jaw surgery, please, if any. And a couple of questions related to that. Sorry about my upstairs neighbors there. So I have kind of like my I don't know how to describe this. The way that my teeth align or sit together, my upper jaw, the internal ridge of those teeth sits inside the pocket of my lower teeth. So what I'm trying to say is that my lower jaw is narrower than my upper jaw. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that normal?
Can you show me what you mean? Okay.
So I don't know how to
just bite and smile wide. Stand back a little bit and just peel your lips back, please. Yeah, peel your lips back right there. It seems pretty, yeah. You have a pretty decent bite, you know? I would say both jaws are narrow, and I would say, so what it looks like to me is your lower teeth are tipped in pretty aggressively, which is super standard for underdeveloped jaws. The lower teeth just tip in to match the narrow upper jaw.
Yeah.
So I would actually say the opposite. I would say your lower jaw is wider than your upper jaw.
Oh, really?
But the lower teeth are tipped in, making it seem like your lower jaw is super narrow. But were you leading this to like questions about mandibular skeletal expansion?
Right. Well, that's actually, I was wondering about double jaw surgery. Are they able to adjust for that, or does the adjustment of the lower teeth have to happen during the orthodontics after an MSE?
It mostly happens during the orthodontics after the MSE. That's the best time to do it. And what would happen is those teeth get uprighted with the orthodontics, which buys you several millimeters down there. But here's what happens. Here's what happens during surgery. During surgery, your lower jaw, well, this doesn't actually affect occlusion too much, but it does affect the appearance of the wideness of your lower jaw. When you advance the lower jaw during surgery, you take the fatter part of your mandible, which is right now buried in your neck, right? And you advance it. So your lower jaw gets the appearance of being wider. But in terms of the width of the lower jaw, the width of the occlusal plane of your lower jaw, like the biting surface of your lower jaw, that has to be fixed during the orthodontics. And that's one reason why doing maxillary transverse expansion non-surgically with MSE is a better approach than doing a 3-piece segmental surgery, because when you do a 3-piece segmental, in other words, when you do what MSE does, but you do it under the knife at the same time that you do the surgical interiorizing of the jaw, the advancement of the upper jaw, then you're basically fucked on the lower jaw, because what you can only transverse expand the upper jaw surgically to the width of the lower teeth. So it becomes a limiting factor. So if you can widen the lower teeth orthodontically, then during surgery, you don't face that limit of how much you can how much you can widen the upper jaw. So widening is best done surgically, or even I would say widen the lower jaw orthodontically, and then you can widen the upper jaw more surgically. But the best way to do it is to just widen the upper and the lower jaw non-surgically with the skeletal expander, and then dental tipping of the lower teeth, and then just do advancement surgically.
Okay, that's really helpful. I'm glad that it won't take a whole lot of extra procedures. And then, I mean, in the ideal world, for my lower jaw to kind of catch up to my upper jaw with that expansion.
Yeah, man. And just on that note, like, I've interviewed several very, very high level orthodontists this year on my channel. Most recently, Mariana Evans yesterday.
Oh, really? Okay.
She's like a super heavyweight in the space. And I was like, I asked Dr. Ting, what do you think about mandibular skeletal expansion? He was like, nah, fuck that. I asked Dr. Lipkin, same thing, not necessary. And then I asked Mariana Evans, do you think MSDO is important? Like, do you think we should be able to do distraction osteogenesis on the lower jaw? She said it's not necessary. So the consensus is that lower jaw widening with a distractor like an MSE for the lower, it's not going to happen anytime soon. Dr. Yousefian is the only one who does it. So it's just not really an option, bro. And if it's not an option, then why even worry about it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, it makes some sense that if the majority of the changes were happening for me initially in the upper palate, that the dental tipping on the lower half can then be reversed kind of similarly with orthodontics, and it would be better not to have to do surgery. So I'm really happy that there's some sort of consensus between all the best providers minus the one. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that maybe a follow-up appointment would be good, just to talk like at some point later after I approach MSE on my own, and get that underway about double jaw surgery, because of course you don't want to put the cart before the horse. In the remainder of our time, I was actually hoping to talk about something that you mentioned on another podcast, some of your meditative efforts, and just kind of like explore a little bit of your experience improving your mind, not only through physiological changes, borne out in the face and elsewhere, like, working out or whatever, but yeah, so take the floor.
So sure. So the first comment I'll make is that definitely the easiest way to improve mind state and mood, if that's what you're going for, is by first going to the body, fixing things like your airway, but then also flooding your body with as much natural dopamine as possible through low sugar eating, through running every day, lifting is 3-4 times a week, and cold plunging or cold showering. Like the dopamine spikes that you can get by just focusing on bodily disciplines is absolutely the most direct route to mood improvement. So if we're talking about mood improvement, go to the body first. Now, if we're talking for like supramundane attainments of the mind, like introspective insights into the nature of the mind, like a la Buddhist enlightenment, that's a whole different story. Then you have to get meditation involved. And in terms of like next level mind discipline stuff, meditation can also be very beneficial there, in terms of like being able to realize negative mental states when they come up, acknowledge that they're just sort of this fleeting thing that's passing through your mind, almost like a bubble that pops out of the air, goes into your head, and is going to wander out eventually if you let it. But what most people do is, as soon as negativity enters the mind, they feed it, they fertilize it, they pour gasoline on the fire, and that makes the mental state more permanent. They believe it's permanent, and so it becomes permanent. So the number one thing that meditation does for happiness, like on an everyday level, is that it makes it a lot easier to realize that negative moods and positive moods, quite frankly, are fleeting, and to be able to let them come and go without fixating on them and then making them worse, right?
Yeah.
Why don't I kick it back to you for like follow-up questions?
I think that what I'm really interested in is the particulars of your meditative practice, and also the duration of that practice, because I know that some people will say, oh yeah, I've been meditating for a month, or for, so many weeks, maybe 10 weeks. And they're like, I'm feeling all the benefits. It's awesome. And then there are people who are like, I've been meditating for 20 years or 10 years. And it's like, that's when I think the real changes are going to start kicking in at the highest level. But also I kind of wanted to avoid practicing purely mindfulness, because you can practice that really easily at any point. I was hoping to hear from you about like your individual journey through different styles of meditation, and like where you landed today.
Yeah. Okay. So I wrote my senior thesis at Bates College about the best way to meditate. That was the question that I began my paper with, is what's the best meditative discipline for achieving nirvana? And what I concluded in that paper was that concentration meditation, rather than vipassana or mindfulness meditation, is, first of all, the approach that the Buddha taught. Even though vipassana or mindfulness, i.e. noting and letting go thoughts as they arise, that's what American New Age Buddhism promotes as real Buddhism, but it's actually not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that the right way to meditate was to meditate with the aim of entering into deep states of concentration called jhana. Jhanic states of concentration are extraordinarily blissful. It's like a single pointedness of the mind where the whole sort of breath body gets absorbed into a singular point of focus. And it's almost like you're washed in this warm cloud of bliss. And when you're in that extremely still, stable, blissful state is where you're like the frame rate of the camera, so to speak, of your mind is slow enough that you can sort of pick out individual frames and then see your mind working in action and have deep meditative insights at that, in that frame of mind, in that state of concentration. So samadhi is another word for it. Jhana, concentration meditation. Samatha is another word for it. Or, the jhanas, the 4 jhanas is the type of meditation practice that I personally do. I obviously don't go super deep these days because I'm a lay person and I have a very busy lay life. But like for any serious yogi, that's what you want to be building towards is jhana.
Jhana. Got it.
Jhana.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been practicing jhanic meditative things?
Since 2013.
Wow. And at first, were you discouraged by the results, or did you seem to immediately kind of pick some of those things up?
No, I picked it up quick. I was really good at it. Yep. A big part of being good at it is having a body that's capable of entering into those states. So because a lot of entering into the deep states of concentration is feeling and molding your own introspective sense of your body, or what Buddhists call breath energy, the more you can make your body feel good, the more you can manipulate it into that single pointed focus and sort of dive into the jhana that really is just sort of an expansion of your breath body that you're doing through your meditation. So I had really good sitting posture because I was doing a lot of posture work at the time. Of the people at the monastery, I was the only one who actually gave a shit about posture. And probably, maybe too much so. Like I was hyper focused on posture, but at one point I had this theory that if I could just get my posture perfect, that the meditation would become totally effortless. And to some degree, it actually worked. Like I was readily accessing lower levels, but like pretty damn, like big picture, pretty damn high levels of concentration, but like big picture Buddhist practice, like probably like first jhana or just below the first jhana, something they call access concentration, out of 4.
Out of 4.
Yeah. 4th jhana is like you completely stop breathing at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen anybody in a monastery or a meditation group near you enter higher states of jhana?
Yeah. I mean, some of the monks at the monastery I was at had like attainments. Like they had stream entry, which is they actually experienced briefly nirvana and then pulled out of it. And so according to the Buddha, enlightenment happens in 4 distinct through 4 distinct realizations. There's stream entry, once return or non-returner, and then full-on nirvana, where like the meditative insight into nirvana is permanently fixed into your consciousness, and then you're totally out of the cycle of samsara. You won't be reborn. There were monks at the monastery who had stream entry, at least, possibly higher. And yeah, those guys were going into jhana every time they sat, probably. Wow. Like Thanissaro Bhikkhu, who was the abbot, he's a jhana master. He's written books on it, and they're extremely helpful. And like if you put into practice what his books say, and you have the karma for it, like if you're naturally predisposed to the concentration, you will access it, which is further evidence, in my opinion, that he was legit and was actually entering those states himself. Yeah. Man,
that's really enticing, and thanks for sharing a little bit about your history with meditation. I'm really just intrigued by that. So I guess we only have a few more minutes, and I didn't want to waste any time. I don't know if people talk to you very much in interviews about how you're doing, and just check up, and see if you're doing all right, because it seems biometrics that we have access to as audience members, that you are on the up and up, hopefully finding great financial success, and also, you know, just like really pioneering this relationship with all these physicians, or I don't know how to refer to them, but surgeons and doctors and stuff like that, and providing access for us to them. That's really awesome. And how are you feeling, and what's most gratifying in your life these days?
Man, so I'm doing, in this moment, honestly, I'm doing is better or than I've ever felt. Like, my life is great these days. Objectively speaking, what's good in my life is I'm building a house, which is going really well. I have a fiance. I'm getting married in a couple of months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Yeah, to a girl that I went to kindergarten with, who
Really?
who I've loved for a very long time. And she's great. She's more than I could have ever asked for. So easy to be with, brings no downside. It's all upside. Like, because when you're looking for a partner, the first thing you got to look for is an absence of downside. Before you look for upside, you have to look for an absence of downside. Like, there's certain things you have to just say no to, you know, insanity, right? Like mental health issues that bear on the relationship, addiction, substance abuse problems, overspending problems, people who are chronic spenders, right? People who aren't healthy, and you can tell in 10 years they're going to be super overweight, even if they aren't now. Complaining, anger, willingness to like flirt and continue to seek other men, even though they're with you. All of those are deal breakers for me. And my fiance has none of that stuff. I shopped around for quite a while. For years, I dated and like tried to gauge what to look for in a long-term spouse. She checks all those boxes. So I have her. My health is better than ever. Okay. My headaches are pretty much gone. They're not zero, but they're a fraction of what they were when I started my JawHack journey, which is why I started my JawHack journey, was to solve my headache problem. That's solved. JawHacks is doing good. I live in my hometown where all my best friends live. I have a very small circle of very good friends that they don't even know about JawHacks. Like, they don't care. They don't give a shit. They're just like,
that's
you have
so
a YouTube
cool.
channel, right?
That's so cool.
Yeah. So they just love me because, like, we basically were in a gang together in high school. And, you know, those are still my best friends. My family's great. I got nieces and nephews. Like, I could just go on forever. But, I exercise every day. I cold plunge every day, pretty much. My dopamine, levels are just where they need to be. When I have low periods of low mood, they're brief and sort of transitory, and they come and go. I let them come and go. And through JawHacks, I get a chance to speak with freaking people like you who are awesome, right? So even though I'm very much fixated in my little hometown where I'm going to probably be for the rest of my life, I do have this sort of arm that reaches out into the broader world where I can connect with interesting people from different places like Minnesota or freaking, Germany or wherever, right? And so that's also a very enriching thing that I have going in my life as well.
Man, that's a tremendous list, and I'm really happy to hear that you're doing better than ever. And
one more thing, bro. One more thing. Yeah. I started going to church.
Really?
Yep. My fiance encouraged me. She's like, "Hey, we should start going to church." Now, look, in my opinion, I always wanted to like go to church. I wasn't sure why, but like I knew there was something stabilizing about it and something about it that sort of blessed the rest of your life. So I go to like the local Lebanese church somewhat consistently. And even though I don't always agree with the priest because he can be a little bit like new agey sometimes. And sometimes I go to church to get away from all the freaking politics and all that bullshit. And he kind of sometimes brings it in a little bit. I don't even focus on the priest. I focus on the images, the icons, the saints, right? And all of these inspiring people who lived very holy lives, who were tough motherfuckers. Like they were tough people. They lived with little. They deprived themselves of pleasures. and they just sought a relationship with the higher power and they achieved it. I focus on that when I go to church, and also the community as well. So that's another enriching thing I have in my life too.
Man, I'm so happy to hear that. Actually, I'm going to church later today, and I've been meeting with the congregation that I'm a part of now since 2019, and my mental health kind of took me away from that, but my sleep therapy really kind of set me back on the like pro-social track, and you're totally right. It's stabilized and enriched every facet of my life, and in fact, like that's where I met my current girlfriend, who I've been dating for about a year and a half now, which is like, I mean, hundreds of times longer than any of my previous relationships, which is just like a great success for me. And so, yeah, I think that the higher power who we find there is definitely instilling great virtues and also bestowing lots of blessings on us. So I'm grateful.
Amen, man. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Haha.
Well, I think that's a great note to finish up on. And I'm really happy to have met you, and I look forward to following up after I get started on my therapies.
All right, man. Hey, great to meet you, and reach out with any questions as you continue. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.